As the U.S. gears up for the Democratic National Convention, voters and global leaders awaiting cues on Vice President Harris's plan for foreign policy should she get elected. Joining us right now is Michael Froman, president of the Council on Foreign Relations. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Do you think there's a lot of daylight when it comes to the foreign policy of Vice President Harris and President Biden?
I don't think there's been a lot of opportunity for them to show daylight at this point. I think probably more will come out over time.
If you were going to speculate about what that daylight looks like, what would it be?
Well, look, I think there'll be a lot of convergence on Russia, on China, probably on trade. I think there's some sense that she's been more outspoken in terms of urging Israel to reduce the number of civilian casualties, to focus on the humanitarian crisis. But those are messages that the Biden administration, including President Biden, have been sending quietly to.
Right. She's just doing it in a more outspoken way.
I think that's probably right, but I don't think there's a fundamental difference of policy there yet. At least it has not emerged as of now. She'll have to figure out where she wants to make a difference, if she does have a different point of view than President Biden. But as of now, it's the Biden-Harris administration, and she's been a very loyal and part of that administration.
What's your sense? You said China. Where do you think she really lands on China? We were talking about TikTok, by the way, which is appealing this ruling right now about whether it's going to get removed. She has not been public, I don't think yet, actually, on the subject of a TikTok, for example.
Not that I'm aware of, but I think there's such a convergence of a consensus on China between Republicans and Democrats in terms of everyone trying to be as hard as they can vis-a-vis China. So I don't expect a lot of daylight there between her and the president.
Do U.S. China relations worsen no matter who is elected?
You know, it's really in China's court. There's a lot that the U.S. has laid out that China needs to do to try and address the relationship. They're waiting to see what happens in the election to decide what they want to do. But the whole issue of overcapacity, of engaging in a very export-related economic recovery plan as opposed to stimulating domestic demand, that's really in their hands. And so a lot of the issues around the future of the relationship, I think, will be dependent on what happens in Beijing, not so much in Washington.
I was thinking this morning about the future of a world where the Federal Reserve cuts interest rates. It takes its foot off the neck of the economy, and the economy can grow. And the world supply chain is not able to supply it because of the barriers and the tariffs that have been put up in place. And concern about a global inflation that would come if we can't do it. Are higher tariffs coming either way, Michael?
Well, I think the Trump campaign has laid out a tariff plan,
right,
of putting 60% tariffs on everything coming from China and 10 to 20% tariffs on everything coming from the rest of the country. And most people close to that campaign say that's really a transactional move to try and get countries to come to the table to talk about various issues in the economic relationship. But the Peterson Institute, which is a great think tank on economics, they've come out with a report saying this will cost the average American family $1,700. So it's a tax, effectively, on the American family. President Biden has kept in place the tariffs that he inherited from President Trump. And I think one question for the Harris administration, if she's elected, will be, can some of those tariffs be lifted, particularly on goods where they're not strategic, where we don't necessarily need to make T-shirts and toys in the United States, but where that is still having a tax on the low-income Americans who spend a bigger portion of their income on those kinds of products.
One of the questions we've been asking, especially about economic policy, but maybe the question should be asked about foreign policy too, is how deep the vice president needs to articulate her views even during this election process at all, because, you know, the clearer your views are, in some ways, the easier they are to at least be critiqued and or attacked. And so, you know, does she get put in a position, is it at the time of the debates where you actually need to have a foreign policy or an economic policy that actually runs deep? Or, you know, can you effectively stay at the surface? What's the best political approach?
I'm not a campaign expert. Those of us who work on foreign policy would like to think the campaigns really are determined by policy. I think it ends up being about a lot of other issues. I think some of those issues will likely come out on the campaign trail and in the debates, but particularly with this short window of campaigning, 90-plus days, my guess is there'll be less opportunity to lay out a lot of brand new policies than there will be to sort of introduce herself to the American people, and former President Trump making his case about why their character is such that they should be the next leader.
How consequential is this election for Ukraine?
I think it's quite consequential. I mean, former President Trump has said he will end the the conflict in a day. That tends to be interpreted that he will make it clear to the Ukrainians that there won't be much more support coming from the United States.
They'll have to make concessions.
They'll have to make concessions, where I think President Biden has certainly been very firm on supporting Ukraine and providing them with everything possible that they need to push the Russians back out of Ukraine. And I think Vice President Harris has been close to that policy as well. So I think there's a real distinction between the two candidates when it comes to Ukraine, probably the most important one.